lot of people ask, what's a point really worth? If points allow you to do something you couldn't otherwise do, whether that is a fabulous trip to the Maldives, taking the kids for a long weekend to a beach, or just staying one night at a hotel in a nearby city, those points are priceless, and no calculation is needed. This is Wandering Woman with Travel Award Search. Today we're going to talk about how much points are worth. If it's not one of those examples where it's priceless, we're going to talk about their worth, including how to calculate the value and when it really matters. We hope you enjoy this video. We'd certainly appreciate subscriptions to our channel, likes or shares. We also have a website called aptly travelawardsearch.com and a Facebook group where we post especially news and articles. Let's first talk about when point value really matters. It really matters only if you're looking at paying cash or using some kind of points. If you're deciding between a couple alternatives, for instance, which hotel to stay in, we'd really advocate that you look at what you want to do with points that make sense for you. Don't make the decision based on the value of the points at the different hotels. Let's talk about how to calculate point values. The equation is straightforward. It's the cash costs that you would spend divided by the points used. That'll give you dollars per point. You want to multiply that by 100 to get cents per point, which is usually the way we talk about them. If you spend 40,000 points for an airfare that would otherwise cost you $800, that would be the 800 divided by 40,000 times 100 will give you a value of 2 cents per point. Now there's a couple other specifics that you need to think about in that cash cost number. Sometimes there are significant taxes and fees required along with points, especially for international airfare. And that cost should be subtracted from the cash cost because you are paying it along with your points. And you want to get to how much cash are you avoiding paying with your points. So in our example, if you have $150 of fees that are required along with those 40,000 points, you take that $150 off of the 800 and then use the equation. And in this case, you will come up with 1.6 cents a point. There are some other specifics to think about too, especially with international airfare. Oftentimes, a round trip is priced much lower than a one-way fare. There's essentially a penalty for just a one-way fare. So to get an accurate number on the cash cost you're avoiding, you should take half of the round trip fare, or sometimes it will give you the pricing for each segment individually. So you can use the price for the segment that you're taking. Now, if you want to just brag, you can use the one-way fare in order to inflate your number if you're just looking for bragging rights. If you're going to hotels and you're doing something like avoiding resort fees, some of the chains, if you have a point stay, you do not have to pay resort fees. So those are more cash costs you're avoiding, so they should actually be added to the cash cost of the room. So the big question is, what's a good point value? First of all, be aware that values vary a lot with point type especially, but also with specific program. That being said, let's give you some general rules of thumb, which are usually pretty good to use. Flexible points are worth about 1.5 cents per point. Airline points should be worth at least 1 cent, and hotel points about 0.75 cents per point. Now these are general guidelines, and if you need more information about those different types of points, we explain that in the video called All Points Aren't Created Equal and a Guide to the Differences. So take a look at that. Those point values do vary program to program, and there are a couple websites you can look at that calculate estimates of those values for each individual program. Keep in mind that they're estimates, though. One of the sites is called frequentflyer, and they calculate what they call a reasonable redemption value, which I found pretty reasonable. So they are one to take a look at for the variation between different programs. There is also another one called the Points Guy. I find that he is more generous with his values, so they are a bit higher. The most accurate values are calculated from your own redemptions, because that shows what you're using your points for, how you want to travel, and the value that is really unique to you. So this is actually a piece of my flight bookings template. You can see I don't go crazy. I don't calculate a cent per point on every flight, especially not on Southwest, because they're very consistent at 1.5 to 1.7 cents per point. But you can see that as you go down the list here, I've gotten over 2 cents a point on all of my bookings. Keep in mind that most of these are in business class. I probably would not actually pay $35.60 for a ticket from Houston to Manchester, even in business class. You have to keep that in mind when looking at these cents per point values. But this flight from Rome to Cairo is actually in economy and still yielded over 2 cents per point. So the very best way to determine how much a point is worth to you is what you want to use them for and doing your own calculation. We don't track hotel point values in our spreadsheet, but we did a study a little while ago comparing point values for hotels in central London. So if you're interested in hotel point values, I'd advise you to take a look at that. You can find that at travelawardsearch.com. Now, another thing to keep in mind, flexible points can be turned into statement credit, and you can also book travel through their portal programs. Sometimes their portal programs have some issues, and there's some reasons to stay away from them, especially for flights. But especially for hotels, they can be advantageous. So this is a list of the different flexible point programs and what the statement credit value is of the points and the value for booking travel through their portal. These should be considered bare minimums. You're going to be much better off transferring points, especially for flights, but this should be your floor. Do not, whatever you do, redeem your points for any less than these values. So let's summarize what we've discussed about the value of points. First of all, if points let you do something you wouldn't otherwise do, those are absolutely priceless. Don't worry about calculating anything. When you're deciding between paying cash or using points, that's the time that point values actually matter. Rules of thumb for point values: flexible points, about 1.50 cents. Airline points, a penny. Hotel points, 0.75. The most accurate point values are those based on your own redemptions. They reflect the way you use points and what you want to do. And remember that flexible points have floor values. Do not redeem those points for anything less than those floor values. This has been Wandering Woman with Travel Award Search, talking about how much a point or mile is worth. We hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, travel wisely, travel well. Thank you.